Hello. So in this video I'm going to be taking you through different techniques that you can use to be textually analysing magazine front covers and magazine double page spreads. Now this specific video is going to be focusing on two particular parts of your assignment one that you can be doing before you do your magazine yourself. Which specifically is for these sections here when you've got to analyse a magazine front cover and analyse a double page spread for the magazine it is that you're looking at. So this video is going to be talking you through some of the key areas that you can focus on when you're doing this analysis task. Not everything that is in this video is going to be specifically relevant for what magazine it is you're doing, but that'll depend on what sort of magazine it is you're looking at, whether it's fashion, whether it's football, music, whatever. In this video, these are the things that I'm going to be going through. So you've got font styles and sizes, colour connotations, mise-en-scène, shot types, page positioning, and key theories. Now the one thing I will stress before we start going through all the stuff that we need to go through in this video is that you're not going to be expected to apply everything that's in this video into your analysis, okay? It all depends on what sort of magazine it is that you're looking at, because some bits will be more relevant to other bits, you know? I will also as well say that these particular tasks that you will be doing, so these ones here, the audience appeal and analysis for your double page spread and for your magazine front covers, these are key for meeting the distinction criteria for this particular learning objective here. So this bit here, it says evaluate the effectiveness of codes and conventions used within magazines for a specific genre, appealing to the audience and fulfilling the magazine's purpose across digital and print platforms. So the key thing there is evaluate. Now this stuff here that we're going to go through is going to allow you to evaluate that stuff, okay? So it is going to be really, really effective and really, really useful for aiming for that distinction grade. Okay, but like I said, not everything in this video is what is going to be relevant to what sort of magazine it is you're looking at. It all depends, really, to be honest. So we may as well just make a start then. So the first thing we're going to look at is the use of fonts and how you can analyse the use of fonts on whatever magazine it is you're looking at. So we're going to look at the style of fonts and the sizes of the fonts as well. So we'll start off looking at sizes because that's the one that's pretty more straightforward. Now, the really easy thing to think about with font sizes is that the larger the font is, the more important that content is. Okay, if it's in a bigger font, if it takes up more space, then that means it's probably quite an important part of that particular magazine page. So you would normally find that you would get larger fonts for things like mastheads or for splash cover stories, like this one here from Mohamed Salah. But also for dual page spreads, you look at things like headlines and decks and pull quotes. Okay. Now the reason why these have larger font sizes is to make sure they all stand out. Okay, so we can understand this bit is the headline, this bit is the deck, this bit is the pull quote, and this bit is the main body. Okay, so if we look at, say for example, this copy of 442 here, you've got the two biggest pieces of text on there is the masthead 442. Obviously that's probably one of the most important parts of a magazine front cover, the title, the magazine, what it is that people are buying, and also the actual cover line here, Mohamed Salah. These are the ones that take up the most space, and that's because these are the most important parts of those pages. Okay, look how much space it takes up just by saying Salah. Okay, it takes up so much space because it connotes that it's got that importance there. Same for the masthead, well, same on Kerrang, same on L. You know, these are really large font sizes and they take up more space because they're important. Okay, that's why Kamala Harris is one of the biggest pieces of text on this magazine cover. It connotes importance, doesn't it? Okay, because they take up more space. So you'll probably find on any given magazine cover that the two pieces of text that take up the most space and are the biggest are the masthead and the splash story cover line. Alright? Now, the actual style of the font is also something that we can pay a lot of attention to as well. You know, we've already done a little bit on font styles, so things like serif fonts and sans serif fonts, script fonts and display fonts. But again, the actual style of the font, the way it looks, the effects that it has on it, can also be can also create effect as well, depending on what sort of magazine or whatever page it is you're looking at. So if you look at this one here from Blink 182, you can see how the text here is sort of looks like it's been scratched a little bit. You know, why they've done that in relation to the actual article, I'm not sure because I can't read it. But you can see how these scratches have got links in with the scratches that are in the page there, and the weird little dinosaur thing there underneath, so you can see that these sort of things all link with each other, don't they? Because they've got those scratches in there. The same can sort of be said for the Kerrang masthead as well. It's not just the fact that it's a large font, but it's also large, it's bold, it's got those weird sort of lines in there as well. And you know, if you think about it, Kerrang magazine is about rock music, and by having a nice big bold in your face font there, it sort of links in with those ideas of rock music being loud, being in your face, you know, sounds like it's being shouted in a way. Now, if that was written in some really small calligraphy font, you know, like I don't know, like a handwritten font, it really wouldn't work, would it really? So they've deliberately used that big, thick, chunky font with those scratches in there as well to make it look a bit sort of rustic and to make it look a bit more aggressive. Okay. Yeah, I've already spoken about that one a little bit, but again, if you look at this front cover of Elle Girl here, you've got this cover line here of Billie Eilish, and they've deliberately used a calligraphy font to make it look like it's been handwritten on there. And you've got to think, okay, well, why have they done that? Why have they put it in that handwritten font? And the reason behind that is because it makes it look a bit more personal. It makes it almost look like she signed that magazine herself. You know, it's not just some text that's been slapped on there. I mean, it is that, but it's been made to look like it's almost like it's more official because it's got her name on it, her signature. It's authorized in a way. It makes it more personal, I suppose, is the word that you used. So you've got to think not just about the actual size of the font, but what fonts have been used, why they use those particular fonts. Okay, particularly for things like cover lines and headlines. Okay. Okay, colours are quite a straightforward one, and analysing colours is probably something that you've done for a long time, but some of you might not really have known that that's what it is you're doing, because it's really important to know that colours have different meanings behind them, and it's important for us to understand, our audiences, to understand what those meanings are, and certain colours are certainly used to specifically aim at certain audiences. So if you really strip it back and look at the absolute basics, you can make a lot of assumptions about how certain colours appeal to certain audiences because of things like stereotypes. Okay, you look at something like this edition of Cosmopolitan here, and you could argue that Cosmopolitan is a magazine that is primarily aimed at women. And then you could also make an argument and say that this is one of the reasons why this cover here, has used a lot of pink colours in there, because stereotypically, pink is a colour that is associated with women. Okay, obviously we all know that stereotypes are not the most accurate way of measuring audiences and audiences' interest, because they're, you know, not accurate at all, but it's certainly something that does come into the mind of producers when they're making products like this. Okay, but also you've got to think about what sort of associations and connotations people and audiences have with colours. So I'll give you a good example. This one here, this magazine cover of 442 is a very good example. So you look at this magazine here, 442 being a magazine about football. You look at this magazine here, what are the primary colours you see there? Yellow and green, okay? And you got to think, okay, well, why do they use yellow and green there? And the simple answer is because the main cover line is about Brazil and about the Brazil national team. And what colour did the Brazil national team play in? Green and yellow. What colour is the Brazilian flag? Green and yellow. So the idea behind that is people will look at this magazine and they will see those colours and they will associate those colours with Brazil because they understand the connotations and the meanings behind it. They know that this is about Brazil because it's got the green and yellow on there. Yes, it does say Brazil on there, but if you got rid of that, you would still understand that this is probably going to be about Brazil because you have those colours there. Okay, you have the greens and the yellows that are from the kit, that are from the flag. Okay, same with this magazine here. This magazine is about punk music, and the main colours you see there, so well, certainly the ones that stand out the most are the pink and the yellow. And again, if you have that understanding, that background knowledge about punk music, you will recognise those colours as being associated with punk, because these are colours that are used on a very iconic punk album from the Sex Pistols. So you will recognise those colours. Okay, it's not always just about connotations, though. You know, it can be something as simple as just being used for emphasis. You know, so again, if you look at this double page spread here, the one we looked at last time for fonts, the word dinosaur is in red, whereas mine and life are in black. So you would look at that and think, okay, well, why is that the word dinosaur been put in red? And it's clearly just there for emphasis, isn't it, really? It's there to emphasise the word dinosaur, almost like to say that this word is the most important part of this particular masthead. It's not saying my dinosaur life, it's saying my dinosaur life. The emphasis is on that word, isn't it? Purely by the fact that it's in a different colour. Okay? Yeah, going back to what I was saying about audiences as well. You know, you've got to think about who the audience is for that magazine, and why do those colours appeal, or why might those colours appeal to those audiences. I mean, if you look at something like these two magazines on the outside, you know, these magazines are both aimed at younger audiences. Match Today primarily aimed at young, early teenage boys, and Girl Talk primarily aimed at young teenage girls. And you can tell that a lot by the colours. And if you look at this one, you've got lots of really bright, vibrant, in-your-face colours. You've got the nice bright red, bright yellow, blue, and this one here, you've got a lot of sort of pastel colours. You've got the pinks, you've got the blues, you've got yellows. Okay, all those colours that are stereotypically more likely to appeal to the audiences of these magazines. It's not very likely that you'll get a magazine that's aimed at kids that is black and white, you know, or a bit dull. Okay, same with this one here. You got Fangoria. And Fangoria is a famous horror movie magazine. This is, to be fair, probably the first time that Fangoria has ever been on the same slide as Match Today and Girl Talk magazine. But the same sort of thing applies. If you're a fan of horror films, then it's more likely that darker, redder colours are going to be more appealing to you, because obviously red has connotations of blood and violence and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so you've got to think, how do the colours appeal to the audience of this magazine? Okay, you might, for example, find that 442 might use a lot of things like green colours, because green is the colour of football pitches, for example. Okay. Okay, mise en scène. Now, mise en scène sounds like it's quite tricky, but it's actually quite a simple thing to get your head around when you think about it. People who do film studies will know about mise en scène already, but in a really, really basic term, mise en scène is a French term that means put into the scene. Now, it started off being used to look at things like theatres and set designs and stuff. But what it basically means is the idea that you can communicate information to audiences about people, about settings, whatever, purely by the visual stuff that you can see. So it's about giving the audience information without telling them the information through things like audio or text. Okay? So we look at things like how the costume, hair, makeup, body language, facial expression, props, positioning, which means where is the object on the screen or on the page, gaze, where are they looking, lighting, colours and location. How do all these things tell us information about the magazine it is that we're looking at, or the person who's on the magazine? Now, it's much more easier to show you examples of what I mean by this. So let's look at that magazine on the left. Again, 442, and you've got Messi on the front cover. Now, if we were to assume that someone was looking at that front cover and they don't know anything about football, by looking at the mise en scène, it's pretty much there telling you, about this particular person. If you've got no idea who Messi is, you can make a lot of assumptions based on the use of mise en scène in this image. So, first of all, how do we know this guy is a footballer? Okay, the costume. He's wearing a football kit. His shirts, shorts, socks, shin pads, boots. That costume, which is this one here, tells us that he is probably going to be a footballer. What else have we got? We've got the football. Okay, props. It's all there. Okay, he's literally stood on a football. Okay, location. Where is he? He's on a football pitch. Okay, more specifically, he stood in front of a goal. Okay. You've got all those things there that tell us he is a footballer. But we can look into a bit more detail and depth about that. We can think, okay, well, What sort of footballer is he? Is he any good? Okay, how do we know he might be quite a good footballer? Okay, let's start off then with his body language. Okay, arms crossed, confident, cocky, facial expression again, confident, a little bit smug. Okay, probably quite good at football. Okay, again, you could even look at the actual sort of, body itself, his physique. Suggests that he is a fit and healthy footballer. He's got strong leg muscles and stuff. Okay, so he's quite trim. So he's probably going to be quite good at football. Oops. What else have we got as well? The fact that he is stood in front of a net and all the goals are in the net. Okay, who put them there? Probably him. Probably because he's quite good at football. Okay, so you can see that he can make all these assumptions about this character essentially based on the use of mise en scène. Okay. Similar for this one as well. Okay, this issue of Vogue is a summer style special, right? Other than the use of the language, how do we know it's a summer special? Well, first of all, you've got the costume. What's she wearing? She's wearing a bathing suit. Okay, easy. Second of all, where is she? Location. She's on a beach. Okay, what sort of beach? A beautiful, nice, sunny beach. How do we know it's sunny? Because of the lighting. Okay, it's very bright, it's very sort of vibrant. Okay, what else have we got on there? It tells us it could be summer. Well, you could talk about the fact that she's well, the use of the sand as well, obviously the location, again comes that idea of beach weather, but also the actual colours they use as well. The colours of the text. Why have they used orange? What does orange suggest? Orange suggests warmth. It's a very warming colour. It's similar to the sun and sunlight, all that stuff. So all the stuff there in mise en scène tells us that this is a summer edition. Okay? If you had no text on there and you had a woman on there with a hat, scarf, gloves, whatever, and she was maybe in some sort of snowy forest backdrop, then you would assume that this is going to be a winter edition of the magazine. But the mise en scène in this one tells us it's a summer edition of the magazine as well. Okay? Okay, shot types is quite a simple one. We could look at loads of different shot types, and again, those of you who do film series will know that we could look at loads. But for the shot types that we need to look at for magazine front covers and double page spreads, we only really need to look at 3, which are long shots, medium shots, and close-up shots, because these are the ones that you're most likely to see on a magazine front cover. So the use of shot types are very important because it tells the audience what the main emphasis of the image is. Now what I mean by that is, if you look at this magazine here for a fashion magazine called Vulcan, which is an online, very sort of stylish, very high-end fashion magazine, they've chosen to use a long shot. Okay, now why did they use the long shot? And the simple answer to that is because the focus of the magazine front page is what he is wearing. It's a fashion magazine, isn't it, really? We don't really care who he is because he's just a model. He's not a celebrity, is he? But we're interested in, okay, what's he wearing? Okay, what's the clothes all about? Alright, so you got a long shot. Now a long shot is where you can see the full model from head to toe. Nothing is cut off there. Same with this one here with Pirlo. Okay, the emphasis is not just on him, it's about his body language, it's about what he's wearing, it's about the fact that he's got an axe there for some bizarre reason. Okay, but you can see him from head to toe. Okay, fashion magazines are quite likely to use long shots, especially if the person on the front cover isn't necessarily a celebrity. Okay, because it's not important who they are, it's about what they're wearing. Moving a bit closer, you've got the idea of the medium long shot. Similar sort of thing really, you can see the top of the head, but then at the bottom the legs are cut off a little bit, so it cuts off around about the thigh level. Okay, still a bit more emphasis on who this person is, because you've got the idea of Rihanna being on the front cover of Elle, and obviously she's quite a big star, but then you've also got emphasis on the costume as well. Okay, the clothes she's wearing, given that it's a fashion magazine. Okay, medium shots are sort of like the best of both worlds really. They're from the waist up, so you've got emphasis on the face and emphasis on the costumes. Medium shots are the most common shot type that you would normally expect to find on a magazine front cover. Okay, it's almost like it's the default shot type. Okay, you've got enough of the person to see who they are, but you've also got enough of things like their body language to see what they're about as well. So for example, you look at this front cover of Wide with Greta Thunberg on the front cover, you know who it is, but also you know about her personality. She's got her arms folded, she's got that stern look on her face. We know about her. If it was just her face, we wouldn't get that body language effect there, would we really? Okay. And then finally, you've got close-ups. So you've got two different types of close-ups. You've got medium close-ups and you've got close-ups. Now, both these kinds of shot types are really used when the emphasis of the photography is the person, not what they are wearing. Now, by that, a good example are these ones here. So you've got a magazine front cover with Mila Kunis on the front cover and a magazine cover with Adele. Now, the reason why these two magazines have both used close-up shots is because it's more about them as a person rather than what they are wearing. It's about them as an artist, okay? It doesn't really matter what they're wearing. Okay, yes, you can still see a little bit of the costume, but that's not the priority. Whereas this one, Elle, it's a fashion magazine, so you'd expect to be able to see their clothes. But given that Q magazine is about music, does it really matter what Adele's wearing? No, it's about her. It's about her, which is why we have the close-up shot as well. Okay, same for GQ as well. You got Harry Styles there. It's about him. It's not about what he's wearing. Okay, and the fact you see close-up shots more commonly with magazines that have celebrities on the front cover, because the celebrities are what's going to sell the magazine, aren't they? Really. Okay, it's about them. It's about the celebrity. People look and go, "Oh, it's Harry Styles. I'm going to buy that because I like Harry Styles." And the close-up shot is more likely to allow people to recognise that he is Harry Styles. Okay. Okay, page positioning is quite a straightforward one. Now, page positioning refers to the idea that how people who put together magazines, the designers, they will take a lot of consideration about what pages go next to each other because they want to link things. Now, what that basically means is, for example, if you look at this edition of Total Film, you've got the front page on there with the film Mank. Okay, now what have you got on the very next page? You've got an advertisement for Mank. Okay, it's almost like it's saying, hey, this film you just read about, you can go and see it as well if you want. So there'll be a lot of emphasis on linking pages together based on the content that's in them. Same again, you look at this, excuse me, this article from NME. You've got an article about festivals, giving you a guide about what the best festivals are going to be in that particular year. Or if you got next to it, you've got an advertisement advertising where you can buy festival tickets from. Okay, that's done deliberately. Okay, so page positioning is very important about how pages relate to one another. You might be reading, I don't know, say you're reading this edition of Billboard, and you've got an interview, a feature with Beyonce in there. You might find that when an article finishes, the very next page is an advertisement for a festival that Beyonce is playing at, or one of her gigs, or something like, or a new album, something like that. Okay, another example here, you've got an article in GQ about cars. Then what have you got next? An advert for a book about cars. You've got this, I'm not sure what magazine this is from actually, Health and Wellbeing. You've got an article here about how to be happy, have a happy mind, whatever, be healthy. And then what have you got next? You've got an advertisement about buying leggings that will help you be happy and be healthy. Okay, like what the article is about. Although why leggings will make you feel happy and healthy, I have no idea, but hey, fair enough. Okay, now we need to move on to some of the key theories. Now these theories again are a bit more complicated and they require you to think a bit more in depth, but are key for looking at a distinction grade. Okay, now the first one is stereotypes. Okay, now this is probably stuff that you have looked at before, but you need to be thinking, to what extent are the people on your front cover being represented to audiences in a very stereotypical way? Do they look like the thing they're meant to look like in a stereotypical world? So if you look at this copy of Metal Hammer, these four guys here from the band Machine Head, if you were to picture a stereotypical, metal band, they look like a stereotypical metal band, don't they, really? You got the long hair, the beards, you got the tattoos, the leather jackets, the dark clothing, the handlebar moustaches. They look like a stereotypical metal band. They look like that preconceived, oversimplified idea of that particular kind of person. Okay? Same with this guy here. We can assume that this guy is a rapper because he looks like a rapper. He's got the typical mise-en-scène that you would associate with a rapper. You've got the bling, you've got the gold teeth, the sunglasses, the huge earrings, the tattoos on his face. He's wearing a suit, it connotes, excess and wealth and all that stuff, but he is being presented to us as a stereotype. Okay, So you may be thinking about to what extent is the person or people in your magazine front cover being presented to you in a very stereotypical way. Alright? Okay, next one, the male gaze, Laura Mulvey. Again, people who do film studies will know this. Now, the male gaze is a very, very important theory from Laura Mulvey, who's a very famous feminist writer, and she argued that when women are being presented to audiences, she studied it in films, but it can be applied to any media text really. Women are often presented to us from the point of view of a heterosexual male, and they're being very highly sexualized, they're being objectified, they're being shown as something to be lusted at rather than something to be, seen as an actual person. And in terms of how this is done through things like media language, it's through things like the shot types, the camera angles that are used, and the mise-en-scène, particularly things like costumes, hair and makeup as well. Okay, so let's look at some examples of what we mean by that. So if you look at these editions of Enemy and Rolling Stone, you can see that there is a clear contrast in the way that the men are being represented on these magazine covers compared to the women. If you look at this one here with Kendrick Lamar and this one with Josh Homme, let's start off, look at the shot types there that they've got. You've got a medium close-up shot here for Josh Homme, and sort of a medium shot here for Kendrick Lamar, but just not quite. Sort of between a medium close-up and a medium shot here for Kendrick Lamar. Look at the costumes they're wearing. Where's the emphasis? It's on their face, isn't it? Okay, that's the bit that takes up the majority of the page. The costumes, they're just wearing bog standard normal clothing, aren't they, really? Okay, but you compare that to Rolling Stone and NME. You've got medium long shot of this person here. I don't know who that is, but I assume it's someone sort of well known. And then you've got a medium long shot of Taylor Swift as well. Okay, look at where's the emphasis on there. It's not just on the face, it's on the entire body. Look at the costume that she's wearing. Look how revealing it is. Look at this. Look at the emphasis on the legs in this shot here. And that is essentially the idea of the male gaze. Okay, these two characters here, these two singers, are being presented to us in an objectified way. You're not just meant to look at them, you're meant to, gaze upon them. Okay, now obviously the idea of the male gaze is not something a particularly good thing, but it is something that does unfortunately exist. Okay, so something to think about. Can the male gaze be applied to the magazine that you're looking at? We can also look at the theory of Lisbeth van Zunen, and Van Zunen argued that for audiences, we learn how genders should and shouldn't act by what we learn from consuming media products. Now, the idea behind that is we may, for example, we see magazine covers with women on the front cover, and we always see images like this that are very highly sexualized, very revealing, often shown through the male gaze. What Van Zunen argues is that the more we see that stuff, audiences will accept that that is what is considered to be feminine. Okay, and the same for masculine ones as well. Okay, so say for example you look at these magazines here, if these are all the only images that we get subjected to, audiences are going to assume that this is what it means to be masculine, this is what you should aspire to. Okay, so we learn how men and women quote unquote should behave by the way that we consume media products. It's quite a complicated theory, this one. She also argued that when we see men represented in media products, and say for example you look at this one here with Anthony Joshua, you can compare that in a way to the idea of the male gaze, given the fact that it's, he's got his shirt off, it's a medium long shot, you can see his body, but the way you look at that magazine is different than the way you would look at this magazine, because Anthony Joshua in this picture here, his sort of figure, his body, is not something that you gaze upon, it's something that you see as a spectacle, it's something that you aspire to be like, rather than something that you aspire to be with. You look at this as an achievement. Okay, these arms, they're an achievement. Okay, looking like this is an achievement rather than this one here, which is something that is to be lusted at. Okay, that's what Van Zunen argued about the way men and women are represented in media products. It's quite a complicated theory, that one, so it's quite a challenging on that one. Okay, so this is quite similar in a way to the idea of the ideal self and the ideal partner. Now, what Carl Rogers argued really is that people presented to us in media products, in this case magazines, are often represented as role models. Okay, it's either something that you should aspire to be, in the sense of the ideal self, or it's something you should aspire to be with regards to the ideal partner. Now, obviously, that will depend on things like sexuality and gender and all that sort of stuff, but the idea behind that is, if you're, say, for example, a heterosexual male and you have these two magazines, by looking at the idea of the ideal self, Henry Cavill here is represented to us as the ideal self, and this person here, Kate Hudson, is being represented to us as the ideal partner. Okay, there's something that we should aspire to be like or be with. Okay, and cover stars are often shown as the ideal self and the ideal partners. I mean, if you look at this one here on the left, you've got Henry Cavill here. Okay, you've got a medium long shot, okay, showing off his figure, showing his physique. You know, he's very strong, he's very muscly. It's almost like saying this is what you should be like. You should have arms bigger than your head. Okay, look at his facial expression, look at his, you know, his posture. He's very confident. Okay, he's very sort of, you know, full of himself, I suppose, wouldn't you, really? Okay, it's the idea that this is how, you know, according to Rogers, he argued this is what people should aspire to be like. Okay, people aspire to be like the ideal self that they see in magazines. Okay, something that they aspire to be, essentially. Okay, now we have done a little bit on reception theory before, when we looked at the stuff about the social obligations of writers. So Stuart Hall's reception theory is the idea that people can look at different media products and take away different meanings from it. And those different meanings and different readings will depend on their own personal opinions, circumstances, backgrounds, whatever. So you've got the preferred reading, which is where the audience takes away the meaning that the producer intended. The oppositional reading, which is where they completely reject that reading. And then you've got the negotiated reading, which is where they sort of sit in the middle. They can sort of see the preferred and the oppositional readings and sort of adjust it in little ways. So this is a very, very famous edition of Cosmopolitan magazine with Tess Holliday on the front cover. Quite, you know, controversial. It caused a lot of debate, a lot of discussion behind it. So the preferred reading behind this magazine cover is that they are trying to promote you know, body confidence, and, you know, not the idea of not being body shamed, and you know, being confident in your own appearances, and you know, not you know, you get what I mean, essentially. So that's what they wanted to that's what they were trying to say with this image. The oppositional reading, however, a lot of people looked at this and thought that it was quite dangerous, given the fact that it could be promoting unhealthy lifestyles. Okay, but again, these different readings will be depending on different people's interpretations, different people's experiences, different people's, you know, opinions, whatever. So it's interesting to think, okay, well, what could the preferred, oppositional, and negotiated readings be for your magazines, or the magazines you're looking at? Okay, uses and gratifications theory. This one is the idea that we as audiences, we consume media products for different reasons. We get certain uses and certain gratifications out of the product that we consume. Like, we use media products for a reason. Okay, the first reason is the idea of diversion and escapism, or entertainment. That can also be used for. So it might be the reason why you choose to go and play a video game, or you choose to go and watch a film. You know, you do it to escape. You do it to forget about your problems. You know, you do it because you want to just lose yourself in a different reality for an hour, 2 hours, whatever. One of the reasons why probably most of us consume the media products that we do. The second one is information, which is where you consume a media product to learn something. So that might be why you choose to read a magazine. You might choose to read that edition of GQ because you want to find out more about Stormzy. You want to learn about, you know, his background or whatever. Or you might want to learn about Florence Pugh by looking at Vogue. social interaction is the idea that you consume media products because it's a social activity. So I'm sure you've been in situations where you've watched a program because everyone else is watching a TV program, or you watch it because everyone says, "Oh, you've got to watch Tiger King or whatever," or you've got to watch whatever else people are watching at the moment. And the idea is you will consume that product so you can interact socially with people about that particular thing. Now, the last one, which is the one that is probably very, very relevant to magazines especially, is the idea of personal identification. Now, that is the idea that you will consume a media product and develop and develop your life around what you have learned or what you've consumed from that product. So say, for example, you look at that issue of GQ, you might look at that and think, yeah, that's a really nice spearmint coat, that. I'm going to go and buy that really nice spearmint coat because you saw it in a magazine. Or you might look at the hat that Florence Pugh is wearing and go, yeah, pretty cool hat, that. I'm going to go and buy that hat because I want that hat. Okay? You identified with that hat because you like that hat, so you went and bought it. Okay? So it could just be something like the media has influenced you to do something personally with whatever it is that you see. It could even be something like, I don't know, you might read an article with Florence Pugh and find out that you can relate to her because she's gone through similar things that you have gone through. So you can relate to it on a personal level, for example. But a lot of it could be, the most common one for that is the idea that you are sort of influenced by what you see to do something. So I saw this coat, I want to now go and buy that coat. I saw it in a magazine. Okay, I think this is the last one. So the last one is the idea of semiotics. Now this is a very, very complicated one. And we could spend ages talking about semiotics. Now semiotics is the idea that it's the way that we study and interpret signs and symbols and what they could mean. So when we're looking at semiotics, we look at two things. We look at the denotation and we look at the connotation. The denotation, is the literal thing that you can see, whatever it is that you're looking at. And the connotation is what that thing could suggest. So let's go back to look at Kerrang. Okay, we all know that Kerrang is a magazine for rock music. Okay, now one of the things we can look at in terms of the signs and symbols is this bit here, the exclamation mark. Okay, you could look at that and think, right, okay, well I know that is the denotation of that's the denotation. The exclamation mark is the denotation. That's the thing that I can see. Now then you got to think about it is, well, okay, well what could that exclamation mark suggest? So you think, right, okay, well why would they use why do you normally use an exclamation mark? You use it to emphasize volume, to emphasize importance, to suggest the idea of shouting. Oh well, why do you need to shout? Because it's a rock music magazine. What do people who like rock music do? Shout, loud, volume. It's about in your face, isn't it? It's about impact. So that's why they have that exclamation mark there. If it was just Kerrang with no exclamation mark, it wouldn't have as much impact. But because it's Kerrang with an exclamation mark there, it gives it that sense of impact, which you can link with the idea of rock music. Okay, it doesn't necessarily need to be about text though. You could look at images and look at what they could suggest. So this is quite complicated, but if you look at something like this image here, you've got the denotation, which is Rihanna walking on a lake. Okay, but let's think, okay, well what could that symbolize? What are the connotations behind that? And you could look at that and think, right, okay, well she's walking on water. Maybe that could have some sort of link to, some sort of religious metaphors, because of the whole story of Jesus walking on water in the Bible. Now, like I said, this is complicated stuff, but any of these that you can apply to the magazine that you're looking at is going to be really important for you to be able to achieve a distinction grade. Okay, now, like I said before, you are not going to be able to talk about all of these things that we have looked at, and the more you can talk about, the better. The more detail you can go into in your analysis, the more likely you are to be achieving that distinction grade for that particular part of the criteria. Okay, so this video is going to help you with these tasks here: audience appeal analysis for your magazine front cover analysis and your magazine double page spread analysis. So that is pretty much everything I need to go through. I know some of this stuff is quite complicated, but don't forget this is distinction grade stuff. If there's anything that you don't get, anything you want me to go through again to clear things up for you, just send me an email or give me a shout when we're in our lesson. But other than that, that's pretty much all I need to go through with you guys, and I'll see you next time. TRC Media.